Alright, let's go through and finish these notes here from yesterday. I want to pick up on this part we left off about the difference between an antigen and an antibody. Antigen, again, we said it's sort of like a name tag on the red blood cells. Antibody are parts that float around in the plasma that help to fight off foreign substances, and namely they help to fight off foreign blood cells. So let's look at this chart again. Type A blood, if we look at the red blood cells, they are going to have little proteins on their surface. These are the antigens, and those proteins are going to indicate that it is type A blood. So if we were able to see under a microscope these little blood cells, which we can't, the little proteins there, they would have a specific shape, not a letter shape necessarily, but a shape that would be unique to type A. And likewise, if we could look at type B blood, they would have these little proteins on their surface that are unique to type B. So what that means then is there are only A and B antibodies. Therefore, if we look at someone who has type AB blood, they will have both of those antigens on their red blood cell surfaces. And type O then is sort of the empty red blood cell, or it has no antigens on its red blood cells. Okay, so then antibodies are present in the blood of the people who have these different types, and the job of the antibodies, the plasma antibodies, is to fight off foreign blood if it were ever donated to a person or whatever the case may be. So a person with type A blood only wants type A blood in their system, and they will have type B antibodies in their plasma. That means that if B blood was ever introduced into their bloodstream, the B antibodies would recognize it and fight it away so that it would not be where it does not belong. Type B blood, which needs to have B antigens or B blood cells present, would fight away type A blood if it were ever introduced. So it has type A antibodies. So the antibodies are basically the opposite of whatever blood type you have, okay? And since we know that A and B antigens are present in type AB blood, no antibodies could be present because A or B antibodies that were present would recognize either one in a AB person, and it would fight its own blood, so that would be bad news. On the opposite of that, type O blood, having no antigens present, would need to fight away any other blood that was introduced into its system. Therefore, it will have both A and B antibodies present. Okay. I want to show you this same chart in another format, and it sometimes is helpful to see it another way. We'll come back to this genetics of blood types in just a moment. Here is one version of another type of this same chart, okay? Don't mind so much about these percentages at the moment. Type A blood, here again, would have A antigens on its surface, these little green squares representing A antigens. And notice that its B antibodies in the plasma have sort of a little half circle shape. So it can't attach to itself, which is good because it won't fight itself. But if type B blood were ever introduced, having these little circle shapes, the B antibodies here would match the donated blood, which does not belong in a person who has type A blood. So we will also come back to this part in just a moment, but I wanted you to see these little shapes and see if they sort of help trigger your brain. Circles and squares, or B and A antigens together, would mean that there would be no antibodies present because it would not want to fight itself away. And opposite again, O having no antigens on its surface would have both types of antibodies present. Okay? Same chart, just another way. This time they're using shapes, sort of a square on its angle and circles here, and you can go ahead and pause the video to take a look at this chart to see if it's helpful to you. Alright, back to the notes here. I want you to copy down this little box here into your notes, keeping in mind the genetics of blood types. A person who has type A blood remember that they're going to receive one gene for their blood type from mom and one gene for their blood type from dad. So what that means is that you can inherit a gene for A blood, or a gene for B blood, or a gene for O blood. All right? And if we look at these combinations, a person who receives two A genes from mom and dad will have type A. Likewise, a person who receives an A gene and an O gene from mom or dad will still have type A. The A is what we call dominant in this case, if you remember that from 7th grade. B blood would be very similar. Two B genes from mom and dad results in type B blood. Same with a B gene and an O gene together would result in type B blood as well. Now, you would need to receive two O genes, one from mom, one from dad, in order to have type O blood. And the only way to have type AB blood is to receive one A gene from one parent and one B gene from the other parent. Okay, and this will be part of on our worksheet here this afternoon. So, copy those down. Next information we have in our notes here. I don't want you to worry about this distribution column here. I don't want you to worry about the percentages here. What I want you to know in your notes would be general statements talking about which blood types are most common and least common. So if we look at this type O here, we have O positive and O negative. Combined make up about 46% or so of the population. We can say the majority of the population has type O blood. The next most common would be type A at about 38 or 39%, and these numbers would vary depending on your source, but they're approximate. Type B blood, about 10 to 11% of the population, and the most rare blood would be type AB, again because you have to receive specific genes from mom and dad, and there is only one combination of that happening. Now, type O blood is a specific gene combination as well, but it is more prevalent in the gene pool, so there are more people who receive those two genes together. Type AB blood making up about 4%. Again, don't worry about the specific percentages of which is plus or which is minus. I just want you to know in general which is most common, which is least common. All right, one more slide here, and what we want to talk about for a moment is who can donate blood to whom. So a blood transfusion or blood donation just is when one person donates blood and another person receives it. So if we copy down this chart here with the arrows in the specific directions that you see them pointing, what this indicates to us is who can donate to whom. So a person with O-type blood, for example, is what we call the universal donor, because he or she could donate blood to him or herself, obviously, also to a person with A-type blood, also to a person with AB blood, and also to a person with B blood. So therefore, type O blood people can donate blood to anyone. Now, the pluses and minuses are a little more specific, but we're not going to go into that today. So don't worry about pluses or minuses. A person with A blood could donate to him or herself, likewise to a person with AB blood. B to him or herself, as well as to AB blood. And AB could only donate to another person with AB blood. So therefore, we call them the universal recipient, meaning that they, AB blood type people, can receive blood from anyone, but can only donate to themselves. All right? I'm going to go back to that other chart for a moment because it outlines that as well on this chart, the donations and recipients. So A-type blood can receive blood from a person with the same as them, A, or from O. Okay? They could donate to themselves or to a person with AB blood. And I'll finish up these notes in just a moment by looking at why that is. Go ahead and notice here type B can receive and can donate. Here's that universal recipient. Type AB blood people can receive from anyone, but only donate to themselves. And then here is that universal donor. They can donate, type O blood people can donate to anyone. Okay? So if we look at why that's the case, Think about antigens and antibodies. If a person with type A blood was going to try to donate to a person with type B blood, don't forget, they would be donating the red blood cells and the plasma. Now, the plasma has those antibodies in it. If this person, type A blood, donates to a person with type B, those B antibodies are going to attack the original person, type B blood's cells, and that won't work out. It's what's called agglutination or clumping, and those cells will be ineffective. So they cannot cross blood types unless a type A person donates to a type AB person, because there are no, I said that wrong, I'm sorry. A type A person can donate to a type